Good morning, rock stars, and welcome back to our Star Island quilt along. My name is Holly, and Knight of String and Story, and it's my job to guide you to quilt with confidence. Today, we are here in my lovely, cozy little quilting corner because we are going to make quarter square triangles together. Now, quarter square triangles are this unit here that is in the center of our block. It is, spoiler, made up of 4 triangles. So I'm going to talk you through that process today, answer your questions. I know we were not able to be live last week when we were cutting out our quilts. So if you have any questions about that, feel free to ask those during our time together as well. Now, I will say I have 2 cameras set up today. Over here, I've got my Facebook and YouTube folks. Over here, I've got my Instagram people. So bear with me as I am looking back and forth. I do believe that I have managed to position these so that I can actually see all of our comments, which is awesome. So good morning, Jane. Good morning, Francie Joe. It is fabulous to see y'all. If you are here live with me, do say hi in the chat. Feel free to chime in, chit chat back and forth. The link this morning in the email doesn't work. Which link, Charmaine? The link over to YouTube or a link to Instagram? Because the link to Instagram should have just taken you to my account. We didn't do pre-made links for these. And hi, Alyssa. It's good to see you. Hello, Selwyn. I'm so glad you're here. And Dot, I love it. All right, let us jump in, shall we? We are taking 2 squares, so colors 1 and color 2. The size of these squares is in your pattern. And we're going to be working with these to make these quarter square triangles. I'm going to be working beginning on page 4 of the pattern. Looks like this, handy dandy. And we are going to simply pair these up and do some marking. Now, I always recommend when you are marking, where did I put that pencil? Here we go. Work with whatever fabric is going to be the easiest to mark on the top, okay? Because we are going to need to draw lines corner to corner on these. So Charmaine, there were a bunch of links in the email this morning. That's why I was asking which one. Because we should have had a direct link over to YouTube. You can also just head over to our YouTube channel and find it. Or we had links just generally pointing to Instagram. So I'm glad that you're here. The important part is you made it. And I love that. Also, shameless plug while I'm thinking about it, because I just saw a notification that reminded me. We are spending the next few weeks piecing this quilt top together. We are going to have a special event in May called a custom quilting masterclass. And I'm actually going to custom quilt my Star Island on camera, talk about the quilting plan that I have made for this quilt, and talk you through those intermediate quilting techniques. So if that is something that is of interest to you, be sure to keep an eye out for all of those details via email on our website. You can go search in the shop, etc. So sidebar, shameless plug. Lee has made it here. So is Karen and Jennifer. It's great to see y'all. All right. So I have taken color 1 and now I am taking color 2, and I'm going to put these squares right sides together. We essentially start by making half square triangles, and then we're going to rotate them to turn them into quarter square triangles. So keep your pin cushion full of pins handy here. And I like to put my pins opposite one another, kind of up there in the corners, okay? And then, perfect. That's good to know, Charmaine. I can double check those links for the rest. Thank you for the heads up. And I'm going to mark corner to corner. This ruler is a little short. I don't necessarily know that I recommend that, but that's all right. We'll get close enough is good enough on this line. I'm using a regular number 2 pencil for this, okay? I am very much someone that is anxious, nervous, suspicious of using ink anywhere near my fabrics, even marking implements that are designed for quilting. Now, there are fantastic, amazing, award-winning quilters that use, water erase pens, the air erase pens, etc. So that does not necessarily mean that you should not use them. I'm just always very nervous about having ink anywhere near my quilt. So if I'm working with light fabric, I grab a good old number 2 pencil. If I'm working on dark fabric, I use a Soline ceramic pencil. This is a mechanical pencil, super handy. We carry these in the shop, and I always use white because I don't want dyes near my fabric either, okay? So I have gone corner to corner and marked, and I am going to sew on either side of this line, all right? So that line I just drew is going to become my cutting line. So we're going to sew 1/4 of an inch to either side. I would recommend when you do this at home, pin and mark all of them so you can chain piece. But I want to be able to show you this unit start to finish. So I'm going to do one at a time. Okay. Zip down one side, pivot around on the other. Cut your thread. Okay. So now it looks like this, right? I have simply split on either side of that line. Yes, my drawn line is a little janky. That's okay. And I'm going to cut at that. Now I picked up a rotary cutter. Where did I set it? There it is. I was like, I remember walking across the room. I'm going to simply line up my ruler and cut on that line. So now I have the makings of 2 half square triangles. And I'm going to go press these the same direction. Okay, so in my case, I've decided I'm going to press to the blue. So I'm going to jump up right over here to one side. And I'm going to keep talking while I do this because I want to talk to y'all about my pressing strategy a little bit. Why is, oh, good heavens. I thought my ruler was, or my iron was on. Okay, the iron's going to heat up. We'll talk while it's heating. I'm going to iron with my item flat first, okay? This is called setting the seam. It does a couple of things. It helps the threads settle into your fabric and makes it a little bit more secure. It also warms up those fibers, which is going to make them more pliable. So when we open up this seam, it's going to be a little bit easier to get a really flat press, okay? So I'm going to press with my item unopened first. Then I'm going to take my fingers and I'm going to gently finger press it open like so. Now, it's very important when you do this that you're just taking your fingers and pressing right at that seam like this. We don't want to be pulling or stretching up this away because that's going to get distortions, okay? We don't want to distort this fabric and make it unsquare. That's part of why I like to do it with my fingers and slide my fingers in there and finger press it flat rather than just wiggling the iron in, because with the iron, it's too easy to kind of shove and pull this point down, all right? All right, I think my iron heated up a little bit, so let me hit these real quick. Warm up those fabrics, finger press them open, and then I can simply press with the iron. So the iron can go straight down rather than needing to wiggle and move. And that's going to help prevent stretching. All right, not my hottest iron because we're still heating a little, but pretty darn good, okay? So now I have 2 half square triangles. I'm going to put them together. The reason that I press to the same side, so y'all can see here, right, is that when I line these up, now my seams are going to nest, okay? And that makes it really easy to get everybody lined up where they're supposed to be. Now, if you are human, chances are these half square triangles are not going to be exactly the same size. They're going to be pretty darn close, okay? I really feel like, you know, amongst the many phrases that I use here at String & Story, the PDC, the pretty darn close, is maybe one I should give a little bit more credence to. And then I'm going to pin across those seams. Yes, Alyssa, this is streaming to YouTube as well. It will be added to our Star Island YouTube playlist. So it'll be easy peasy to watch this replay. If you're not human, Quinn, then there's a high likelihood that yours will in fact be exactly the same size down to the, you know, the atom, right? Okay. For you, Quinn, that's what I expect. And you can see mine are a little bit off on this side. We're going to trim these in a minute. The most important thing is getting those seams lined up with one another. And I have pinned across the seams. All right. Because now we're going to mark going the other way. And get that line pretty darn close. And we're going to sew on either side of the line once again. And voila. Okay. So line, stitching on either side of the line. You just put a standard on yourself. It's okay, Quinn. You can also release the standard because you can release things that are imposed by other people. Let's see. Quinn says, I just started trying to catch up today, started inventory my stash, and will definitely need breaks. Yes. Also, let me mention that it is absolutely still a time that you can jump in on the Star Island Quilt Along. So if you're catching this and you're like, dang, that looks like fun, I wish I had joined. Here's the easy peasy thing. Get your fabric, whether it's from me, we have kits, by buying yardage, shopping your stash, wherever you want to get your fabric, buy a copy of the pattern, sign up for the Quilt Along. The Quilt Along is free, right? All you got to do is get your pattern. And then just cut out these squares to get started. It's okay if you cut week by week, if life is busy and you're just kind of going along with me, all right? Carolyn says, I was thinking of using a layer cake for the stars, making them scrappy. I can get one of the squares and 2 sets of Tri-Rex. Will that work? The problem is that quarter square triangles are made 2 at a time, Carolyn. So you would be short 2 sets of Tri-Rex. You're going to need 4 sets of Tri-Rex per square, because when you put those 2 squares together, you're going to end up with 2 quarter square triangles. So you're going to want 4 of the Tri-Rex so that you can make 2 blocks. Does that make sense? If you have enough that you're like, it's okay, just every single block is going to be different and I'm going to end up with a bunch of extra quarter square triangles at the end, that would work. Just bear that in mind, that you'll end up with extra quarter square triangles. Great question. I saw a question from Alyssa over here. Work teachers are interrupting my quilting joy. Yes, I totally understand, but I will see you at Sip and Sew. Yay. Quinn says, is directional fabric okay for the purple background that you have? I'm considering changing at least one of my fabrics. I think it's okay. I don't mind in my quilt when fabric goes all different directions, because I'm going to use most of my quilts from all different directions, right? This is a square throw that we're making, which means when it gets thrown over the back of my couch, it's going to get grabbed every which way off of there to get used and snuggled under. So I don't mind if my fabric turns kind of funky directions. But I know that that really bothers some people. So Quinn, it probably is going to really come down to like your level of neuroticism about the thing. Like, is that something that your brain is going to get stuck on and it's going to bother you forever? And if so, I probably wouldn't use directional fabric. But if you're like, whatever, I'm going to grab the quilt all kind of ways, then you're good. Great question. All right. Just like before, we are going to cut on that line. The drawn line, of course, not the stitching lines. So we end up with 2 quarter square triangles. Pull your pins out. Now, this is the fun part, okay? Before, and I have 2 of them, so I'm going to do 1 in front of each camera, okay? Before you open this up, take the center piece like this and go boop, all right? And pop that little stitch right there. So y'all see this? You're going to take that center stitch and go boop, pop that little stitch. You're going to end up with spun seams. So what that means is now when we go to press this, we're going to do the same thing. We'll set the seams first. And then when I go to press this, where I opened it up, my seams are going to end up spinning off from that little center 4 patch. Does that make sense? Okay, so let me go press these and then I'll show you what it looks like. I like to pop that seam for the first time before I press, because I just think it makes it a little bit easier to then get these flat. And I don't have to handle them so much when they're hot from the iron. Oh, these are going to be cute, y'all. I'm using that funky kind of faux panel, faux quilt top print in the center of my stars. And it's gonna look like made fabric, and it's gonna be so good. Okay. So here's these. I'm not starching or anything right now since I am, teaching and we're moving right along. Okay. See how we end up with this lovely little 4 patch here in the middle, and those seams spin around it. Same thing here. You're everywhere, Quinn. I love that. I love that you're on both platforms. Okay, so our lovely little quarter square triangle, and the spins are the seams are spinning around it. And look at how fun these are going to look. This is that. I'll show you all what the fabric looks like. This is what the fabric starts out looking like. right? As these fun little diamonds all put together. And then it chops up and it's going to look like made fabric. And I am so excited about it. Okay. Our last step is to trim. And I am realizing I didn't grab my square ruler. So hang tight. We're going to grab the trimming ruler. Y'all know I got to forget something or it's not real life. Let's see. Where did we stick this? We were using it yesterday to make samples. Okay. Let's see. Jennifer says, I'm using something called Vegas strip, 6.5-inch strips by Width of Fabric, and I'm getting 4 blocks from 2 strips. Oh, cool. I love, see, but you're an actual rocket scientist. So breaking down that quilt math, I'm going to guess gave your brain the warm fuzzies. Thinking about breaking down that quilt math makes me panic slightly. Quinn says, I might avoid the directional fabric for now. I'd rather focus on the new to me skills than stress that the fabrics are going the same way. That makes total sense. These are the quarter square triangles. Quinn, great question. So they're going to go right here. Notice how much we get to trim off, right? You see how much bigger that is than the block that it's in the middle of? That's because funky things can happen, and I would rather make big and trim down, okay? So per the pattern, we are going to trim to 4.5 inches square. If you have a fancy block lock for this, feel free. I really like, I have this OmniGrid ruler that I bought 1 million years ago, and see how it has this diagonal line across it, right? I put that 45-degree line on the 45-degree line of my block, okay? I know my folks on Instagram, you can actually see this a little better because you can see my work surface. But mine came out at 5 inches on, well, 5 inches on one side and just shy of 5 inches on the other side. So what I'm going to do in order to trim it is I'm going to trim to 4 3/4 of an inch by simply sliding at 45 degrees straight down, keeping that line, that 45-degree line on my block, okay? Because I have about a 1/2 inch to trim off. So I'm going to trim about 1/4 of an inch off of each side in order to keep the center point of my block centered. And then when I go to the other side, same thing. When I line it up, I'm now at 4 3/4 inches, and I'm going to pull down at 75 degrees. So for my, let me hold this up for YouTube. Okay. So see how this is lined up on the 45-degree line roughly, because I'm holding it reversed. So in order to cut this, I will pull the ruler so that my block is then lined up at 4.5 inches, and you can see the extra that I'm going to trim off up here. Okay. So can y'all see this? So I've got that 45-degree line that's going to help me make sure my block is square, and I'm at 4 3/4 inches. And then I'm going to simply slide my ruler until I'm at 4.5, and what's hanging out is what needs to get trimmed off. Does that make sense? If you don't have a square ruler with a 45-degree line on it, I highly recommend acquiring one. I don't know if we actually have any, so I'm not even sure this is a shameless plug. We have some 12.5-inch ones in stock at the moment. I love a 6.5-inch size. That's going to cover most of the sizes that you're going to need. A 12.5-inch really, really would. Yeah, there you go. I love that you wrote down all the quote math, Jennifer. That's amazing. And thank you, Quinn. I'm a big fan of my bracelet as well. It's from a boutique here in Duluth called Personify. And I love them. All right. So 4.5 inches. I'm looking at mine going, something's not coming out right. Why isn't it coming out right? Hold on. I trimmed there. Double check yourself, even when you're in the middle of teaching. Mine is not coming out centered. Okay, so if yours is not coming out centered either, probably because I flipped it around so many times while talking, take your little dog ears off and then try again, okay? Yeah, I think I flipped mine the wrong way in the midst of all of that back and forth. That looks better. Okie dokie. because you want, when you trim it, your points are going to be points, okay? Right? Like where this comes to a point, you want to have those points. All right, you don't want to end up with something like extra fabric and this point being off center, okay? On my, let's see. Oh, these over here or this one? This proves us that you are in fact human. Oh, so very human, Gwen. I feel like the quilt math error of last week also proved humanity. So, all right, so there's one. Let's do the other one. Any questions about how to make these quarter square triangles? I have blazed through this process with several side quests along the way. I want to make sure that any questions y'all have get answered. Okay, beautiful. Now I'm going to pay attention this time to how I turn it. So that hopefully okay, yep. And that time it worked perfectly, which suggests to me, like I said, that I just turned it around too many times talking earlier. All right. And there's 2, all right? So you're going to make these 2 at a time. That means you're going to make 8 pairs. So here is 1, and I'm going to do this 7 more times to make these lovely little centers, okay? They're still going to look big when I hold them up to my quilt because seam allowances, okay? So they're going to get pieced in there with our lovely little Tri-Rex in the future, okay? Y'all, this has been delightful. I hope that this tutorial is helpful for you to have an overview of how to make these quarter square units. Like I mentioned, if you were just now joining us for the Star Island Quilt Along, you can totally still jump in. Head to stringandstory.com. There's a big banner right at the top of the page, right on our homepage, with all the details about how the Quilt Along is working, what we're doing each week, the resources that are getting sent out weekly. All you got to do is get your pattern, get your fabric, and jump in. Like I said, you can totally cut as we go. So if you want to just start by cutting the squares to make these quarter square triangles and just do a little bit of cutting each week, it's going to make this super, super manageable. When you get that pattern, if you are just now joining us and you have any questions about cutting, be sure to head over to our YouTube channel at String and Story. We have a playlist for this quilt along, and I made a whole video last week of the cutting process, talking through how I use my Stripology ruler to make this super fast and accessible. All right. Let's see. Quinn says the blocks you are making are pushing me to want to take a different approach to the fabric and have fun with my prints and colors. I love making wild fabric choices. Y'all know this. Our Perfect Fit quilts along earlier this year chose very outlandish colors and prints together, and I loved the result. I'm doing the same thing here. I've got a lot of prints on prints. It's quilting. I don't want to take it too seriously. And I love that element of being able to experiment and just kind of see what happens as fabric cuts up and comes back together. And there's always lots of fun surprises. In fact, I'll show you all a block. I mentioned we were making samples yesterday for an event that I'm going to next month. And this is my Polaris block. So this is one we did as a quilt along last year, but we use the animal fabric, right? And these are also pretty bold print and color choices, and look how fun that came out, right? So don't be afraid to go bold with your fabrics. Embrace that. And thanks for being here, y'all. So head to stringandstory.com. Don't forget to like, subscribe, follow, etc. And I will see y'all next week to keep on cutting and piecing. All right. Bye for now.